The families deserve this closure.
Tonight, a decision from a Manitoba judge to keep the jury in the upcoming trial of a man accused of killing 4 Indigenous women.
A system to notify the public when an Indigenous woman, girl, Two-Spirit plus person goes missing is an effective tool to bring them home.
A pilot project to bring the red dress alert system to Manitoba is announced. And a vigil is held in Ottawa ahead of Red Dress Day on Sunday. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. A Manitoba judge made his decision to keep the jury for a trial of a Winnipeg man facing 4 murder charges involving 4 women, all believed to be Indigenous. The women, Rebecca Contois, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and as yet to be identified woman who's been given the name Buffalo Woman by the Indigenous community, were alleged to have been killed in the spring of 2022. T.R. Wheatley joins us now.
The Jeremy Skibicki trial will move forward with a jury. His lawyer's attempts to make this a judge-alone trial were denied by the judge, Glenn Joyle. Before revealing his decision, Joyle explained to those inside the courtroom only 2 people can overturn having a jury trial, the presiding judge and the Attorney General. Skibicki's lawyer, Leonard Tyler, spoke briefly outside the courthouse.
Chief Judge's decision, and just follow it, of course, and onwards and upwards we go to the jury trial.
A lot of the defense's expert testimony that Joyle heard this week was about pre-trial media coverage and jury bias. However, the research presented was focused on U.S. trials. In the end, Joyle said the Canadian judicial system is different and that the defense did not present a clear enough case for him to change to judge alone. Joyle made it a point to say the law doesn't require jurors' minds to be a blank slate. He trusts the instructions the jurors receive is enough, especially after having taken their oaths. This was the second time defense tried to get the jury tossed. Earlier this year, they filed separate motions that were also denied. Outside the courthouse, family members and supports from some Indigenous organizations gathered after the decision, but chose not to share their thoughts publicly right now. Skibicki's ex-mother-in-law was also in attendance supporting the families.
I believe that justice will come for those poor victims that deserve, the families deserve this closure, and he deserves to, if he's guilty or found guilty, he deserves to pay the price.
In court this week, it was also revealed Skibicki's defense team would offer a not criminally responsible on account of mental disorder defense. Outside, his lawyer would only say this.
That'll be elucidated further in the trial proper, so we'll leave it at that.
The start of the trial begins on Monday. Now, what's said in the courtroom on both Monday and Tuesday are considered closed hearings, which means it can't be reported on. Meanwhile, the jury is expected back midweek on May 8th. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Thanks, TR. You can find much more coverage of this trial over on our website, aptnnews.ca, from our web reporter, Kathleen Martins. Today, the federal government unveiled a new pilot program for a red dress alert in Manitoba. The alert will notify the public of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. Sierra Bettens has that story.
It's an announcement being heralded as historic for addressing the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people. Today, at the Manitoba Legislature, ministers from Canada and Manitoba announced a new Red Dress Alert project patterned after cell phone Amber Alerts for missing children.
Indigenous women, girls, 2S LGBTQIA plus peoples are roughly 6 times more likely to be murdered than their non-Indigenous counterparts throughout Canada. And in Manitoba, they are 19 times more likely to be murdered or missing. A red dress alert system will notify the public when an Indigenous woman, girl, or gender diverse person goes missing so they can be brought home safely.
The project is a partnership between the province and federal government. Ottawa has dedicated $123 million over 5 years to MMIWG2S initiatives. Manitoba Families Minister Nahani Fontaine says Manitoba is ground zero for the MMIWG2S crisis. She said that 2 levels of government will implement the alert with community groups, including the Bear Clan Patrol.
Today's announcement is so important because, yes, we're ground zero, but also we have been taking a lead across the country in respect of solutions and the work that needs to be done collectively.
While the program is only being piloted in Manitoba, Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Gary Ananda says there's potential to make it nationwide.
We believe that this can be the driver for us to be able to scale. Now, I cannot give you a timeline on this because a lot of it will come down to the amount of work that's done by partners. But when we're ready, I can assure you that we will move forward as a federal government.
Sierra Buttons, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations, Gary Ananda, joins me now here in studio. Minister Ananda, thanks so much for joining us here today in the city to make an announcement about the red dress alert. Can you give us a bit more on the announcement and how you think it will help with the ongoing crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls?
Well, thank you, and I'm glad to be here. The red dress alert is an idea that many who are working the front lines, many survivors and their families have been asking for. We know that within the first few hours of someone going missing, particularly Indigenous women, girl, or two-spirited individual, we know that within the first few hours it's easier to find that person if the community knows about it. So a red dress alert essentially alerts the community about a missing person, specific in this case to Indigenous women and to us LGBTQI+ peoples. And what will happen is that once the alert goes out, the community will be able to inform law enforcement or other systems of this person's presence and where they are and how they could be reached. So this is really a way of saving lives and ensuring that those who may go missing are found and are returned home safely.
Minister, of course, we don't get you in studio too often, so I wanted to ask a couple of other questions. One being about Bill C-53, the controversial bill that's meant for the recognition of certain Métis governments in Alberta, Ontario, and Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan recently withdrew the Métis Nation Saskatchewan. A judge had recently ruled that proper consultation didn't happen in Alberta, and there's been widespread condemnation amongst First Nations across the country over the inclusion of the Métis Nation of Ontario. Is this bill dead?
We're speaking to partners. There are a number of different considerations. We are engaging them on what the next steps ought to be. But I think what's important to recognize is that as a government, we are committed to ensuring that we move towards a path of self-determination, one that is really grounded on Section 35 of the Constitution. So we look forward to the ongoing conversations to see what the next steps are.
Do you think Bill C-53 will pass?
Well, at this point, I think we're considering the options, and we're engaging with partners to see how they would like to proceed, and we will be able to communicate further on this in several weeks.
The recently announced budget, of course, as you know, made no mention of reconciliation. Do you think there was a reason for that or an oversight?
There was, in fact, a full chapter on reconciliation. If you look at the way the budget rolled out this year, it's very unique and very different than past years. There are a number of different announcements that took place before and after the formal release of the budget itself. And there have been a number of key areas where Indigenous people are front and center, including the Loan Guarantee Program with $5 billion to ensure that Indigenous communities and nations are able to undertake business ventures. There is supports, for example, the Red Dress Alert. We have additional supports, for example, on the establishment of a modern treaty commissioner, which we announced formally yesterday. So we have staggered these announcements, but let's be very clear. The budget itself has a significant portion of it dedicated to Indigenous peoples.
Finally here, Minister, Nunavut Tunngavik Inc. has called for an inquiry into Canada's handling of the Johannes Revoir case. Is that something that's being considered?
Look, the Revoir case is something that has triggered many people, many communities. It is just absolutely devastating what happened. Canada tried every step of the way to ensure that justice is served, accountability is reached. I've spoken to a number of survivors who were at the school when Revoir was there, and they're deeply disappointed, but they're also relieved that he's no longer alive. I do believe that if warranted, there should be further review of the actions of everyone involved in this. But I am relieved today that Revoir can no longer impact and hurt young people. But the scars that he left is going to last, and we need to find a way to support and to heal and to ensure that this never happens again.
Minister Ananda, we'll have to leave it there. Do appreciate you taking some time for us in studio today.
Thank you.
To Ottawa now, where a vigil was held today ahead of this weekend's Red Dress Day. May 5th is the National Day of Awareness for Missing or Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two-Spirit Peoples. About 36 people gathered in the park, which is named after Annie Putuk, an Inuit woman who drowned in the Rideau River in 2016 under suspicious circumstances. It was a time to come together, share stories, songs, and games. The Tunasutvinna Inuit organization organized the event to honor and remember Inuit victims who were murdered or went missing in the capital. Mika Kumuksusel says it's important to stand together to raise awareness of the epidemic that's happening.
We have not only but to look in our own city to look at the devastation that MMIWG2S causes. We can look at the young student who came here for school, Savannah Pikuyak, and she was murdered. Mary Papatsi's body was found here in the city, and she was missing for a very long time. And what message does that send to Inuit children and youth? It says that their mothers aren't important and that their sisters don't matter, and that's why it's so important for us to be here today.
A Whitehorse shelter is under intense scrutiny on the heels of an inquest into a number of deaths at the facility. That story and more still to come after the break. Welcome back. An alleged altercation between a security officer and an Indigenous woman in a Winnipeg grocery store is creating buzz on social media and within the Indigenous community. T.R. Wheatley explains.
Angela Anton is smudging so she can keep her words positive as she speaks her truth.
Ground cedar.
It's been a few days since she says she saw an assault of a First Nations woman and her 7-year-old son.
He yanked her bag and he wound up to go and hit her, and he actually punched her. You could hear that when he struck her in the mouth, and I was just like, what the hell is happening?
She went on to say the son was pushed into a vending machine. It happened inside this store in an area in Winnipeg that's home to a large Indigenous community. As an Ojibwe woman herself, she believes this was a racial profiling situation.
No respect for Indigenous people, there are people out there with problems, but we still have to go into the store to buy our bread and our milk and stuff.
Manitoba's Grand Chief is in agreement and says systemic discrimination needs to stop.
It's unfortunate that it's 2024 and that still happens to our people, and that's not right.
She says her organization is fed up with this type of treatment and are taking a hard stance because of this incident.
Well, we're a big economy as First Nation people, and people have to realize that.
AMC's Jordan's Principal program gives vouchers to hundreds of families every month to get groceries here. Until now, she says they have terminated their working relationship with Food Fair. The store owners say this was a shoplifting matter, and dealing with incidents like this can be complex. Winnipeg police have confirmed they received a report on the matter and are investigating. In a statement put out by the store, owners said they have suspended the staff member in question pending an investigation. The owners also went on to say Going forward, this is an opportunity for education, growth, and repair. Their next steps, reaching out to Indigenous organizations to give their staff some cross-cultural training.
And we'll talk about the medicine wheel.
Coincidentally, Antoine, who witnessed the alleged assault, just happens to do that already as the Director of Indigenous Services at the Behavior Health Foundation.
We do cultural sensitivity training with Winnipeg police and cadets and 911 operators and stuff like that.
Once she's processed what she witnessed, she's hoping to take the store owners up on their offer. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
To the north now, and the nonprofit organization that operates a shelter in downtown Whitehorse has been under some intense scrutiny following an inquest into how 4 women died at the facility. Now, Yukon's NDP is taking things a step further by calling for a full-on government review. Here's Sarah Connors with that story.
On Wednesday, Yukon MLAs unanimously passed a motion urging the Liberal government to do an in-depth review on Connective, the nonprofit organization that operates the Whitehorse Emergency Shelter. The motion was moved by NDP MLA Annie Blake.
When there's issues, serious issues happening that are having a direct impact on the quality of lives and on the lives of people who access these services, that should be enough to call for a review to happen.
Last month, a 3-week coroner's inquest examined the deaths of 4 First Nations women who died at the shelter, 2 of whom died under Connective's watch. The inquest found there was a lack of training for Connective staff and inconsistent policies and procedures. Blake believes staff are doing the best with what they have, but they need more support.
I would just hate to see more lives lost within any of these facilities that are managed by Connective.
Connective also operates a low-barrier housing service. According to Blake, people have died while using the service. The nonprofit is also responsible for the SHARP program, a halfway house program at the Whitehorse Correctional Center. Blake says she's heard stories of staff and residents selling and using drugs on site and finding ways of getting themselves put back into jail to avoid the program.
I think that's a huge issue because the halfway house is an opportunity for folks who are incarcerated or involved with the justice system to be supported, to be reintegrated back into society.
The Minister of Health and Social Services says the allegations about the SHARP program is news to her. However, she committed to undertaking a review. Connective said in a statement, in part, it needs more time to ensure it's taking measured and thorough action. However, it's committed to improving its programming and services. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Thanks, Sarah. A new episode of APTN Investigates debuts tonight right after the news. We'll hear from the reporter behind the documentary after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Hannah Enns shares this amazing shot of the Northern Lights. Hannah took this picture in Shamattawa First Nation in northern Manitoba. Absolutely stunning. Thanks, Hannah. Nice to have something from Shamattawa. Think of us this weekend and send us your pictures to share at aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, showers and 13 for Halifax, cloudy and 15 in Fredericton. +4 in Kuujjuaq, 0 for Nain. 21 and cloudy in Montreal, 19 in Val-d'Or. Showers and 15 for Sault Ste. Marie, 20 in North Bay. 18 with rain for Thunder Bay, 11 in Sioux Lookout. Chance of snow and 6 for God's Lake and Thompson. 13 in Winnipeg, 14 for Dauphin. 10 with rain in Regina, showers and 12 in Saskatoon. 12 in Meadow Lake, sunny and 10 for Buffalo Narrows. Sun's out across northern Alberta, 16 in High Level, 17 for Peace River. Sunny and 14 in Edmonton, Calgary and Lethbridge. 18 and cloudy in Vancouver, cloud and 22 for Kamloops. 17 in Prince George, 16 for Dease Lake. -4 with snow in Old Crow, 16 above for Whitehorse. 8 in Yellowknife, 22 and sunny in Wrigley. -5 with snow in Sax Harbor, 2 above in Paulatuck. 0 with snow for Chesterfield and Whale Cove. -7 with snow in Resolute, 2 below with snow in Arctic Bay. In the winter of 1987, Stanley Morris Peters was struck and killed in a hit-and-run in BC's coastal mountains. There was a conviction in the case, but Peters' remains have never been found. Tonight on APTN Investigates, journalist Rob Smith digs into the decades-old unsolved mystery. Rob joins us now from our Vancouver bureau. Rob, thanks for being with us. Can you start by giving us some backstory on the case of Stanley Peters?
Yeah, what we got coming up is a bit of a tragic mystery. Stanley Peters went missing way back in the late 80s. His family thought he simply disappeared, and it only a few years later was found out that it was actually a hit and run, and he was killed by some drunk drivers in Mount Currie, some young folks who were out partying. However, the mystery part of this is that the body was never found. So there was a conviction in the case. There was a conviction without a body. So we take a look at how that happened and what this has all done to the family, who are still searching for the remains of their father.
Yeah, Rob, how has this ordeal impacted Stanley's 3 daughters?
They have continued to search all these years. They were just basically teenagers and children at the time, and there was a little bit of an estrangement. Their parents had divorced, and they had just gotten back together with their dad, had moved in with their dad months before his disappearance. So they, since then, have not given up the search. They continue to get tips of where the body may be, and every time they hear a tip, they head out into their vast homelands, vast territories, to try to find their dad, to bring him home.
Tragic stuff, Rob. What's next for the Peters family?
Well, what's next is there could be tips that are still coming in. They are still asking for help, and they'll continue to search until he's found.
Well, Rob, maybe tonight's show will drum up some more tips as well. Appreciate you speaking with us about it.
Thank you.
And you can catch APTN Investigates Lost Spirit in a little more than a minute from now. That is all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Friday. A reminder, join us as we launch a new newscast on Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time that will air 5 days a week, in addition to this nightly newscast here. Exciting stuff. And of course, you can always keep up to date anytime by visiting our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy Miigwech, thanks for being with us. Have a great night.